Welcome to this video lecture on short-term decisions. Short-term decision making is used when making accept or reject decisions. This would be in situations where you have an offer for a job or a project. You want to decide whether you should accept that job or project or reject it. You could also use it in make or buy decisions where you decide whether you make a product in-house or you buy the product from outside. It's also used whether you want to make a decision about outsourcing a product. We also use it in shutdown decision making where you would want to decide whether you should shut down part of the business process. And then we also use it in price minimization where you want to decide whether you should minimize the price on a product. And lastly, but not the least, you could also use it where a process needs further processing. You want to decide whether you should sell it as it is or you process it further so that you're able to sell it at a higher price. In so doing, we use relevant costs to help us in making these decisions. Relevant costs are defined as future cash flow which are incremental or specific to the decision that we are undertaking. Relevant costs may also be opportunity costs, which are the value of a benefit sacrificed when one course of action is chosen in preference to another alternative. The opportunity cost is represented by the potential benefit forgone. Also included in relevant costs are avoidable costs, which are the specific costs of an activity or sector of a business which would be avoided if that activity or sector did not exist. Avoidable costs are usually associated with shutdown decisions. The fixed costs may be avoided if they are specific to a department or product. Allocated fixed costs are likely to change. So these allocated fixed costs will be irrelevant costs. Also included in non-relevant costs are sunk costs, which are the costs that have already been incurred. Also committed costs, which are those costs which might include the cost of materials under a long-term contract. Lastly but not least, notional costs, which are the non-cash items such as depreciation or the apportionment of general overheads. We now narrow down to specific relevant costs. We first start with the relevant costs of materials. With material, you have to ask yourself or ascertain in the question whether this material needed in this project is in inventory or is not in inventory. If it's not in inventory, there isn't much of a problem because then you simply have to buy it. So the relevant cost would be the current replacement cost. But if the material is in inventory, then you have to ask yourself one of three questions. First question being, is this material in continuous use? So that if you take it from inventory, then you would need to replace it. So if it's in continuous use, then the relevant cost would be the current replacement cost. If on the other hand, this material has no other use, maybe because it was bought in excess or the reason why it was initially bought is no longer applicable, Then if taken from inventory, then this material will not need to be replaced. So the relevant cost will be the current resale value. And the third question is whether this material is scarce. If the material is scarce, and if it's taken out of inventory, it can't be replaced, or it's difficult to replace it, then the opportunity cost is the relevant cost. Let's now apply the relevant cost of material principles in a question. So in this question, a contract requires 400 kgs of X and 200 kgs of Y. The following data is given. In inventory, we have 300 kilograms of material X, which has a historical cost of $2 per kg and a current replacement price of $3 per kg, and it has a scrap value, if we are to sell it, of $2.20 per kg. Also in inventory, we have 300 kilograms of inventory Y, which has a historical cost of 50 cents per kg, a current purchase price of $2 per kg, and a scrap value of $1.50 per kg. X is no longer used by the company. Y is regularly used for other products or purposes within the business. So we're required to compute the relevant cost of material X and Y to be included in the contract. We start with X. Since X is no longer used by the company, the inventory in X will be used rather than buying new ones. This contract requires 400 kgs of X, but in inventory there's only 300 kgs. So meaning we have to buy in 100 kgs. So the relevant cost will be the 300 kgs times the scrap value of 220 kgs. Then the 100 shortfall, the relevant cost will be the $3 since it has to be purchased. So that gives us a total relevant cost of 960 for material X. We move to material Y. Since material Y, we are told it is reused regularly, then it means which is in continual use there. So it means we need to replace it once we use it. So the whole 200 kgs of Y that we need in this project has to be replaced once taken out for this new project. So the current replacement cost, which is $2 per kg, times 200 kgs, so our relevant cost will be $400. So you then add the 960 plus the 400 to give you a total relevant cost of $1,360. Next we move to the relevant cost of labor. With labor, you ask yourself one of two questions. Is the current labor force working at full capacity, or does it have spare capacity? If it has spare capacity, then additional work can be undertaken, hence the relevant cost will be nil. Because if additional work is not undertaken, the staff will simply sit idle and yet they will be paid. But if the workforce is working at full capacity, then it means additional work cannot be undertaken unless we hire more staff. So if we hire more staff, then the relevant cost will be the current rate of pay. However, there may be instances when you cannot hire more staff because the skill sets required are specialized, or it might just be difficult to find the right staff. So it means you have to move your current staff from their current job to this new project. So the relevant cost will be the variable cost of undertaking that project plus the lost contribution from the current job where you're going to move your current employees. Let's again demonstrate the relevant cost of labor with an example question. APLC is deciding whether to undertake a new contract. 15 hours of labor are required for the contract. Labor is currently at full capacity, producing X. You are given the cost card for X. X requires 10 kgs of materials which cost $2. So to make 1 unit of X, we require $20 worth of materials, and it requires 5 hours which cost $6 per hour. So to make 1 unit of X, we require $30 of labor cost. So the total costs being $50. The selling price for product X is $75, giving us a contribution of $25 per unit. So what is the cost of using 15 hours of labor for the contract? If we move 15 hours of labor from product X, how many units of X are we not going to make? Since product X requires 5 hours, if you remove 15 hours, it means 3 units of X will not be made. One unit of X, so the 15 hours will cost us 15 times 6, which will be $90 as our variable cost of labor. And since 5 hours gives us a contribution of $25 per unit, and there are 5 hours in 15 hours, so 15 divided by 5 will give you 3 hours, so 3 times 25, so the lost contribution will be 75. So the total relevant cost will be $165. Another way of looking at it is to compute the lost revenue. So the lost revenue will be 3 times 75. The selling price here, 75, which is our revenue. Then minus saved costs from producing X. To produce X, we require 20 kgs, 10 kgs of material at $2, which gives us 20. So 3 times 20 will give us 60. So 225 minus 60 will give us the relevant cost for 15 hours, 165. Apart from computing these relevant costs, deciding whether to make or buy, to outsource, there are other assumptions in relevant costs that you need to be able to bring out in your solution. Qualitative factors such as cost behavior patterns are known with certainty. Okay, now these are the assumptions in relevant costing. At first, cost behavior patterns are known with certainty. Second, costs, prices, and volumes are known with certainty. The objective is to maximize profit or to maximize contribution, and that information is complete and reliable. When stating these assumptions, state all assumptions made in relevant costing questions. Again, make sure read the question, do the application as given in the question. So that brings us to the conclusion of relevant costs. I would encourage you to listen to this video again, practice the questions, the illustrative questions in the video. Then once you've grasped the concept, go and apply these concepts with questions in the SCCA revision kit under short-term decision making. Thank you, and we'll catch you in the next video lecture.